Question number 3, Andrew Little.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Andrew Little.
Mr Speaker, this question was originally set down for the Prime Minister, and I therefore seek leave of the House to have the question transferred back to the Prime Minister.
No, I refer the member to Speaker's ruling 1695. I'm not prepared to put the leave. It is a prerogative of the government to decide where the leave has gone, where the question's gone to. They've made that decision. If the member wants to continue asking it, as it's on the order paper, he can do so.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, I anticipated that this was going to arise because of the transfer of the question and went back and reviewed all of the Hansard from the last term of Parliament where the then Leader of the Opposition, John Key, was putting down questions to the then Prime Minister, Helen Clark, and could find no examples where the Prime Minister transferred a question from the Leader of the Opposition. And therefore, I ask that the House give consideration to whether that ruling that you referred to should actually apply in this circumstance, because there has to be an ability for the opposition to question the Prime Minister on a range of issues. The Prime Minister ultimately is responsible for all issues around the government's policy and progress.
I'll hear from the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, quite apart from the fact that the appropriate delegation does lie with the Minister who is going to answer the question today, referring to the previous government's arrangements simply points to the fact that when it came to Helen Clark, she was head and shoulders in competence above anybody else in that government.
Order. The last comment. Order. I'm on my feet for the benefit of all members. The last comment from the Leader of the House was unhelpful to the order of the House. But in regards to the point, order. In regards to the point raised by Chris Hipkins, there are plenty of opportunities for the Leader of the Opposition to ask questions of the Prime Minister, and that's been used on a very regular basis through most question times. When I look at the wording of this particular question, it is very much about the workings of the Overseas Investment Office, and therefore I see no difficulty at all with the fact that it's been transferred. I don't think in any way it will lessen the quality of the answer. The answer therefore lies in the future if the member the Leader of the Opposition wants to target a question to the Prime Minister, then he needs to change the wording, and in this case not refer so much to the portfolio of Overseas Investment Office. First point of order, Chris. Order. This is a point of order. Chris.
Mr Speaker, and the point of order is this. It's between the tension that the opposition finds between asking general primary questions and more specific primary questions. What we are endeavouring to do in most of our questions now, rather than asking does he stand by all of his statements, actually be more specific in giving an indication of the direction of travel of the supplementary questions. The risk of doing that now under this arrangement is that in fact the Prime Minister could answer next to no questions, because as soon as we give an indication of the nature of the question, he therefore has grounds to transfer them.
No, I need no further. We'll hear from the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, I think, Mr Speaker,
order.
I think the point is that while the shadow leader might say that the Labor Party are asking questions that require a high degree of specificity in order that they get good information, it's equally the government's desire that they do get good information, and therefore the question is transferred to the Minister, who is likely to have far more at her fingertips than the general information that might come in preparation for those closed-off questions.
No, listen. I invite members to have a careful read of Speaker's rulings, both page 168 and 169. It has been long held a convention that the government has the right to decide where the question will be directed. The only involvement for me as Speaker would be to intervene in that process if I saw it as a deliberate attempt by government not to be accountable for the question that's being asked. In this case, I do not see that at all. We will order. Again, I've ruled tightly on this matter, so we're not addressing that. If it's a fresh point of order, I'm happy.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Grant Robertson, fresh point of order.
I want to refer you to Speaker's ruling 1682.
Sorry?
Speaker's ruling 1682 from Speaker Smith, where it does state, as you say, that the government is entitled to transfer questions.
However, it does say that the Speaker would be concerned if this was anathema to the obtaining of information, and if the Minister or Prime Minister being questioned could be the only person who had particular information. The first leg of this question is about a statement made by the Prime Minister. We simply cannot see how any other minister can have that information. And I think this is a clear case where Standing Order 168, Speaker's Ruling 1682 comes into play. How can the minister stand by the Prime Minister's statement?
I disagree entirely with the member. And furthermore, when he said he was raising a fresh point of order, he's taken the opportunity to simply relitigate a decision I've made. If the Leader of the Opposition wants to proceed with the question, he can do so. If he does not want to proceed with the question, then we'll move immediately to question number 4. It's in the hands of the Leader of the Opposition. Question. Order. Order. Question number 4, Kanwal C. Bakshi.
Mr. Speaker,